Hello.
Hey, Deb.
Hi, I am so excited to be talking to you today. So, just
So,
real quick, Kelly and I are going to do a little introduction in a moment, but so we are colleagues and we both share similar work, but I'm sure huge differences as well. But why don't I just start by telling you why we're here, and then we'll do intros, and then we'll get into it.
yeah,
So, okay, cool. So, um, we are here today because we know that there are so many women who are struggling with things that we have struggled with, and maybe that we even continue to struggle with, right? And we're specifically talking about body image, our relationship to food, our relationship to weight, our relationship to health and wellness, and the frustration that so many of us have that we are trying to do all the right things. We're trying to manage the food that we put in our mouths, motivate ourselves to get to the gym, you know, don't go into that bigger size of clothes, so torture yourself, get on the scale, you know, oh, I should love my body even when it's at a weight that I'm not comfortable with. No, maybe I shouldn't love my body at a weight that it's comfortable with because won't I be then giving into it?
yeah,
Right. Yeah. It's so hard. And usually this relates into in a lot of us are doing things like a lot of trying to control ourselves, beating ourselves up, telling ourselves what we should be doing, trying to read, being on Instagram. Oh, if I would just do that, maybe I should take supplements. Maybe I should take Ozempic. Maybe I should this. Da, 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 da. And it's this like constant spinning, and there's literally no peace around it. Like when people say like peace around food, we're like, peace around food? Like, what are you talking about peace around food? All I
right,
know is, I just binged. I shouldn't. Maybe I should tomorrow not eat all day.
right,
Like, all these things, and
right,
we're so hard on ourselves.
right. Yes, absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
And so what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about, well, why does that happen?
Mhm.
And and what really, right? What's the solution? How you can shift, right? From if this is where you are today, how can you shift over here? Because over here is very stressful, it's energy draining, it's hard. Um, everything that you can think of negative is over here, and over here is there's peace and ease, right? And I promise, right, that we can go because both of us have done that. We've gone from here to here,
Yeah.
and over here is pretty darn awesome, right, and easy. So yeah,
Yeah, well, and I think what happens is that and I'll just say this, then we'll do an intro and then we'll go into it a little more deeply. But I think that to a large degree, we've been kind of sold a lie. That is, if we do more and if we control our bodies and we control things, that we will get to that peace. We were talking before we started recording, and I was saying like it's almost like, well, when my kids go to college, when my husband makes more money, when my job gets a little bit less stressful, when I finish that diet, whatever, like when I lose 8 pounds or 40 pounds or 100 pounds, then I
then
will be peaceful. Then I will have
yeah,
the peace, I will have the happiness, I will have the joy, I'll have that. And it's like we know that it's such a lie, but it's such a compelling lie that just keeps us
yeah, just hook,
in,
line, and sinker. I like
totally.
to I like to say it's like the when then syndrome,
Yes.
right? When
Yeah,
then I'm going to have that peace, right?
exactly.
And we think that, and this is very actually a perfectionist pattern, right? Where we think that what we are looking for is someday when, right? And it's not. It's always now, right? And I think that that could be a good takeaway in and of itself, right? What time is it? It's now. What time can I have a different thought, take a different action, um, treat myself more kindly now, right? And we can do that. And I think that's where our brain trips us up is that our brain says, no, you can't you can't take action on something, for your health now. There's too much, right? And so then we make it a big deal, and then it shuts us down from doing anything.
Yes.
Um, and then that again, where that perfectionism comes in, where it's like because our brain makes up the story that, well, I need all this time, right? And something that I help women get really great at is like, no, you don't. You got 5 minutes? Yes, you do. Like that's where we start.
Yes.
And yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it?
It's so interesting, and I do think that I talk to with my clients the same thing. I say you do like start with the micro moments because
Yeah,
it's when that is a trickster brain move that's
yeah,
saying to you, well, the only way you can do this is if you completely like revamp your entire diet 100%,
yeah,
if you never eat carbs again, or
yeah,
and they all are just so daunting and such a big project. So of course you say, I can't do it now. I don't have the time. And then, but all those are like trickster moves that basically keep us from the life we desire because it's our brain choosing status quo, the certainty and familiar kind of way of being that we've always known, a sense of control, baseline survival. And it's like anything beyond that is like, that's kind of scary. We're just going to keep you here. So it's kind of a funny
Mhm.
thing how our brain actually kind of wants us to be maybe at the, at this place of like the hamster wheel. Our brain kind of wants it, even being a little bit maybe overweight or out of shape. There's some way that part of our brain can be like, um, well, that just keeps us safe. We don't become all that we have the potential to be. We like, it kind of keeps us limited. It keeps us focused on safety and survival. And
Mhm.
it's kind of crazy to think that part of our brain can actually want us to stay exactly where we are. And the other
Mhm.
part of our brain that we have to actually develop more is the one that's like, no, you can actually be the limitless being that you are in this moment, right now.
Yeah,
Okay, well, so let's
right,
go to this.
right.
Let's do a quick introduction. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about you and what you do. And then at the end, we'll tell people how they can learn more about us and find us.
Sure, yeah. So Kelly Summersett, and I started out as a personal trainer in like 2009. But I knew that it was always more than that. It was more than just working somebody out, right? To me, it was always getting what's the root? Why don't women motivate themselves? Why do they fall off the fitness wagon? Why are they so stressed? What's the root here, right? How can we have this peace that this all elusive peace, right? And so then it morphed into life coaching for me in around 2013. So I've been doing this ever since. And one of my signature programs is MindBodyNow. And it really does makes you have that peace with food, fitness, your body, so that everything works better from this point forward. So um, I don't know. I live in Tennessee and I love where I live. And now that it's fall, I'm looking outside right now. I get to do more hiking and do more fun things. So I'm excited for that.
Awesome.
So,
Great.
what about you?
Yeah. So I'm Deb Blum, and I have a program that's called the Whole Soul Way. And I just finished enrolling for that. So I'm here talking more about kind of like ways that you can connect with me generally right now. But so what I am is a midlife awakening mentor. I started out in health coaching, and that was my entry point. And that was back in 2011. I think I graduated from Institute for Integrative Nutrition
Okay.
and then carried on doing life coach training and parent coach training and coached one-on-one all the way until 4 years ago when I created the Whole Soul Way program. And what the Whole Soul Way program really is that what most of us are living is first half of life living. It's kind of like what we just already talked about. It's like the doing and the pushing and the striving, and that we're trying to live according to like what life expects from us, societal expectations, and we often are unconsciously driven in these ways. And that's usually the time, first half of life, where we're also like getting our basic needs met, setting up house, finding a partner,
Yeah.
procreating. Biology is a really big piece of this time. And then there's this moment in time where, if we're lucky, we kind of get this wake up to like, I might want something more than just survival. And a lot of the people probably who come to you too, they know that there is something else available. They know that those strategies that we've been using don't really work that well. The doing and the forcing, the performing, the perfecting, the people pleasing, the all those things that I know both of us share in common about who we work with and
Yeah.
what we've experienced. And then so we want to do something different. So I kind of work more on a global scale of that midlife awakening journey, to living this other way that we're talking about here, which is
Yeah.
much more free, where we really
Yeah.
do allow ourselves to rest more, receive more. We're more gentle and accepting with ourselves. We actually love ourselves in these not in this like Pollyanna kind of way, but in
Right.
this like really genuinely authentic way of like, why would I like almost like, well, of course I'm going to treat my body well because I love my body. Like I love me.
Right.
I want it to be alive
Right.
and functioning well forever, not forever, but for my time I'm supposed to be here on the planet. So the Whole Soul Way program is really bridging the gap between the two of them and
Yeah.
teaches women how to be a leader of their own lives and their own healing and their own growth journey.
I love that so much. And that is such a parallel with how we coach and who we work with, right? And I just had a consult with a young professional. Well, she's in her mid 30s, right? Go, all the things, right? And and she's realizing, as we do, right, in that second part of our life, it's like, well, am I even happy? Is this even making sense? Like, what's going on here? Where's my fulfillment? Where's this peace that I've been promising myself when I continue to do all of these things?
Yes.
And and then with her, right, struggling with um, thinking that there's something wrong with her because she can't seem to lose the weight and keep it off, right? And keeps regaining it. And so that I'm excited to talk more about that because that's what we talked about is like, well, if we take those steps back, what's going on back here? And so it can be things, whoever's listening in, like, are you doing these things, right? Then, you know, I think awareness, as you would, I'm sure, agree, that's the first step. We've got to be aware that this isn't, we even if we've normalized it, this isn't normal. Like this doesn't need to be normal, right? And so do you want to share what you see with women where with all of this overdoing and overfunctioning? What do you see?
Yeah, well, I just first wanted to say one other thing too is that this isn't necessarily even about like someone who has too much weight on their body. It could
Oh,
be,
absolutely.
but
Yes.
it's
Good
oftentimes
point.
it's also like we just don't have the freedom to um like we're always thinking like we have to maintain that thin body or that or we have like almost like a dysmorphic perspective. We look at our bodies and we think that it's overweight when it's actually a perfect weight, or so we have a lot of different ways that we could be struggling, or I need to like it's the constant pressure that I have to keep on exercising and walking and lifting and doing all the things. And I'm not saying that those aren't important things, but they come from more of like a compulsion and a should rather than
Yeah, and
from,
a checklist on your to-do list,
yes,
right? It's
exactly.
just to me, what I see with clients, it's like just this another to do, another have to, another something, right? That I have to do for this body that I don't even like. So, but that is
Yeah.
such a good point.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and also, like sometimes like feeling like, oh, well, the experts tell me I need to do it this way, but we lose track of like what our body actually needs. And our body might need different things based on maybe menstrual cycle or where you are, like at what, your age. Are you postmenopausal, premenopausal? Are you a person who are you like in this stage of your life? Are you needing more walking or more yoga or maybe more weights and feeling like it's about, taking good care of the vessel, not so much rules and like
Yeah,
rigid ways of being.
right.
And I think that what's happening for so many of us is that it's we really have been conditioned to believe that we are, meant to always be doing and that and I think at the core of it all is that we we really do believe that our lovability
Mm,
is based on our what we do, how we like how much we produce, what we achieve, what other people think about us, how much we've done for other people, how much we've actually sacrificed ourselves, how
Yeah.
much we've like taken, prioritized another person over ourselves. And so when we get caught up in like that, we aren't like this fear that we're not loved for who we are. So I'm
Right.
always having to either earn my
Well,
keep or yeah,
and also with our body, right? Oh, I'm going to be more lovable, right? Or I'm going to attract my mate if my body looks
totally.
a certain way,
Right.
right?
If it's thin, if
Or
it's strong, if
right,
it's this, if it's that. Yeah.
right, right. I won't be sexy for my partner, right? So much is tied to, oh my gosh, our bodies and overdoing for everybody, absolutely. And I see that all the time. That used to be me, and I think that used to be you as well, right?
Yep.
And so what we're telling you guys is this is a lie, right? If you feel that you're never enough, right? Another common theme. You're not ever doing enough, you're not sexy enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not the right size, you're not pleasing enough. Another thing that I see is like where women think everything's their responsibility and their fault, right?
Yep.
If people are in a bad mood, well, that was my fault.
Yep.
I
Oh,
didn't try hard enough. And if people are in a good mood, well, it's like, wow, what did I do right today? I get to pat myself on the back and say I did a good job for 5 seconds before I go back to,
yeah, totally.
right?
Totally. Yes.
And,
Yep.
and
And
so then what I see is that we're doing, and like you said, the pleasing, the over controlling, the over performing, all of the things, and and then we're so curious of why maybe our body we're not taking care of our body the way we want to, right? And maybe like everybody who's listening right now, maybe take a pause on that, right? Because if with our logical brain, that I mean, it's pretty logical. It's pretty straightforward. If we don't have time for ourselves and we are so busy with everything else, well, of course we're not going to have time for ourselves and our health and our bodies. That's kind of like a duh, right? And not in any type of, shameful way. I've said that to myself like so many times. Like, duh, Kelly. Well, of course I'm exhausted.
yes.
Right? And but waking up to that is super important, right? So
Yeah. Yes, because I think that there's such a way that it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, that I do more with the intention of getting the results I want. And that can be all kinds of things. It can be, I'm going to meal plan this week so that I can eat really healthy. But then by doing that, we've now stolen our energy because
that we didn't
we
even
worked so hard.
have.
We had to go grocery shopping, we had to da, da, da,
Yeah.
da, 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 and I also have to make the meal for my kids and my husband because he doesn't really eat the same foods as me. And then I have to do this. And then I I'm also, but I also want to work out and I want to do this. And so we start like having the list of all those doing things and those should things.
Right.
And I think that then what happens is then we do kind of like we just burn ourselves out. And that this is really an interesting thing because there's some truth to some things that we're talking about that I don't want to discount either, which is that when you're busy, it is harder because like women say who maybe work and then have kids and there's like literally only a certain number of hours in the day,
Yeah.
and there is some truth to that. Maybe like you can't do it all at the same time. And I think before we got on the call today, we talked about that really a lot of these choices are in the moment choices. They're not, it doesn't mean that we don't have a plan for them, but they don't have to take a ton of time. And
Mhm.
oftentimes we are one of the ways that I call it like an ego trickster move, like the ego is like a protection part of you. And it's like a trickster move that
Yeah.
keeps you from making real progress in your life and you talked about it too, like this story that is that it has to take a lot of time, that it has to be like, you almost have to have if you're going to be healthy, you have to be, I'm going to the gym. I'm also eating healthy. I'm also getting good sleep. I'm also this. And it's like, well, wait a second. You just took on so many things.
Right,
You're completely setting yourself up for failure because you also made every one of those things into this massive thing,
right,
that's going to like take over all those extra hours you had before. And then you're no longer in that present moment. You're really making choices, doing things that you should do, checking the boxes, like you said,
right,
rather than learning how to do things kind of from the inside out. You
right,
know,
right. And I think for both of us, neither of us are teaching, oh, well, you need to quit your job, right? You need to, get a nanny for your kids. We're not, right? Like you can still have a lovely family life. You can still have a dynamic career. You can still um, have hobbies. You can have all of the things, right? When you learn to unravel, you call it that inner protector, I call it that inner critic that's telling us that we have to do all of those overs, right?
yep,
And when we stop doing the overs and we just do normal, which is head and shoulders above people anyway already,
totally.
um, then there's that peace that we can have in the present moment because there's I mean the way I teach it, right? Teaching women how to be fully present and now, then there's less on our mind. We are just fully present. Well, okay, there's a work project. What's the next task? I do that. Okay, now I'm home. I'm gonna sit and play with Billy for 5 minutes, right? Or now I'm gonna, right? And then time becomes more expansive. We're even more productive.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating when we unravel from all of these overs, from what society tells us. It's not that we're not going to do, but in fact, in my experience with my clients, we do a shit ton more, right? Like the women that I coach have 4 to 6 hours more productivity time in a week because they're not doing the overs, but they're doing amazing.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they have time for themselves and for their health and for their bodies.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about this because the other thing too is that we're not even talking about what we need to talk about is how much time we spend ruminating, thinking about it, beating ourselves up, telling us
So much.
ourselves we should have done it better. So a lot of times we're not even really counting how much time we're sucking the life out of ourselves by all of that inner critic dialogue that happens, and then also all the things that you said, like the over, because when it was so often that voice in our head is actually telling us that we have to do it, say perfectly,
Yeah.
or maybe even like another person expects us to do it a certain way. So we go do these extras and we really kind of it's like the perfection is the enemy of good enough or something. And I
Yeah.
don't even remember whatever it
Yeah.
is, but
Perfection
basically
is the devil.
yeah, it's like, it's so few things need to be done so precisely and perfectly. And so I have a couple of things I wanted to talk about and I wanted to ask you on, and, because I think it'd be really helpful for people to understand, because it's easy to go to that place. I think that you talked about like either, well, I need more time, so I'm just going to have to like stop doing this big thing over here or quit. That could be true for you. Like you might say, I've been doing a thing that doesn't work for me anymore, and I really need to change that. Totally
Mhm.
fine.
Mhm.
But the other thing we're not saying, oh, just follow your heart, like just
Yeah.
do what you want. And like if you don't want to take care of yourself, like you shouldn't that day. And like we're not being so like extreme on either end. We're really saying like that actually the real sweet spot is in this balance of like doing and being, achieving and resting, or I would say achieving versus receiving.
Mhm.
Like there's a lot more available here. We just think it's like either I'm
Get
sitting
rid
on
of
the
it.
couch doing nothing, eating chocolate chips and, popcorn or whatever your thing is,
Yeah.
or I'm over here and I'm rigidly adhering to the precise rules of how one can achieve the thing that I'm never able to consistently achieve.
Right.
So, so that's the one thing I wanted to talk to you about. And I also just wanted to make sure I say one thing really, really clearly to everybody is that I have come so far in this But I also want to be honest that I'm a human being and that I'm still a person who I can get into cycles of busyness and find myself in the pantry going to eat something and like even saying to myself, I don't really think I should eat this right now because I know I'm not, I'd be just as happy if I had that banana, but then kind of saying, no, I just want it and having the like inner rebellion because every once in a while things happen and we're not perfect and we're not expecting anyone. Like, I'm not here saying to somebody, like, there's some perfect way of being. This is really about like honoring actually the full spectrum of being human,
Nuances,
which
right?
is that, and sometimes what happens is it's that moment that I did actually eat candy corn or something like that. And then afterwards I had a moment to have a healing moment where I got to say, what was going on with me that had me so sure that that's what was going to make me feel better in that moment, and not beat myself up, not say, oh, like what was wrong with me? It was more like, what was going on? And
Mm,
going into that curiosity of like, oh,
yeah,
you know what had happened right before that? I had had X, Y, and Z happen before that. Well, I wonder how that felt for me, and allow myself to have a space to feel it. Now, would it be ideal if I had felt my feelings in the moment? Of course it would have been. But I also have to be like, I'm not a perfect person. I'm gonna
sure.
have a lot of moments where my brain is still gonna go into primitive, primal places, and I'm gonna do things like that. And then it's what you choose to do in that moment, because
Right,
usually what that will do for most of us is that spins us out. And now all of a sudden it's a week of eating that way
right,
instead of a
right.
moment of eating that way, and then honoring and being like, yeah, okay, like, you know what? Maybe my body really thought it needed some candy corn in that moment, or maybe like emotionally, I needed a moment to soothe that way. I mean,
Yeah,
come on. So
yeah,
I'm honoring that because I'm not here to ever paint a picture that like there's some like end game per se, but
right,
dude, the amount of peace that I have in my life compared to what I had before
right.
is pretty like drastic. So I think that's what you're speaking to. And I would love for you to share a little bit about like maybe a picture that someone could see, like what's it, maybe like what's it like before and like what's it like after in like a scenario. Maybe it's like, I don't know, someone's exercise or so, do you have a scenario that you can give that helps a person to see what you're actually doing with them?
So I'll just try to keep it brief, but a recent client who took my small group class, the class ended in September. All right. She she came to me and she was just beyond, she was over it. She was in her 30s and probably for a good 2 decades, right? She had struggled with obsessing about food and obsessing about her body. And the more she obsessed, the more weight she would gain, and then the more frustration that she would have. And she just couldn't figure it out, right? She had done the diets, she had done, weight loss programs, she had done, uh, I don't even know what else she's done, right? But this is so common. And a lot of times women will find me as a last resort. Isn't that interesting, right? I've tried all the things. Well, I might as well try having a better relationship with myself. and and I'm laughing at myself because this also was me, right? It took me so many years to get coached for the first time, right? Thinking that there was something else. Oh, I must, there must be something I can do, right?
Yeah, I
And
just need to figure this out. I'm
yeah,
gonna figure it out. This time I'm gonna figure it out. This is the right diet.
right. And so I think it's just human nature.
Totally.
So, but what we did in the class, which was because nobody thinks it's going to be this angle. And I think we talked of this about it. Maybe we talked around it today, but the root, right, is these societal pressures that we put on ourselves to do all of these overs. And and that's what was happening in her life, right? She was over functioning at work. She was over pleasing in her family. She was doing all of these overs, not giving her time or energy for herself, but wasn't connecting the dots that, oh, these overs were contributing to her lack of health. And that's what we do. We connect the dots, right? And and so she learned to just be not the over, the normal, right? The whatever, the awesome, the
Yeah.
awesome woman that she was. And she learned to have more command at work, set better boundaries. She learned to say no. She learned what her values were so that she could easily, know what needed to fill her plate or her time, right? And so once she unraveled from all of that, and then I got her curious about what are, because when we are so busy doing all of the overs, it doesn't even occur to us that we can have joy in our lives, right? That we can have pleasure, right? Because everything is just taskmaster, checklist. And so I got her curious. Well, what do you enjoy, right? And so she loves crafting and right, all of these things. And so once she brought some joy back in her life that now she had time and energy for, then um, like everything shifted, like just everything shifts that way. And so then, obviously the food component, like we got to the bottom of, well, she was doing a lot of emotional eating, right? Eating when she wasn't hungry. Well, we got to the root of that, which was in perfectionism, right? Which was in all of these overs that she was doing and that were creating that stress, that anxiety, right? That discomfort. And the thing that we don't want to do most of all is feel our feelings. That's why we eat. That's why we eat our feelings, right? So once we got to the bottom of that and she was able to make peace with that, it didn't, then she was aware, oh, I'm about to eat this. I don't want this. This isn't why, right? I know I have better tools now. And so she was able to step away. She was able to do different things.
Mm.
And then, she started small with her activity level, right? So for her, it was just doing some walking, right? And I gave her some just simple things to do, at home in her living room. And so my class, right, was only 8 weeks. All right. And this is what is so awesome. And this is not like it's rare. This is a normal thing that happens is because when women have this better relationship with themselves, right? And they figure out what they were doing in these other areas of their lives that were keeping them from that health in their bodies. Uh, she wrote she wrote to me because we were going to do a check up um, one-on-one. We just did this a few weeks ago, right? So we ended the class in September. We just did, what is this? Still October. All right. So not very much time, right? And she says, Kelly, I want to tell you about all the things, right? And how she's having an easier time at work, how she's looking um, to get another job opportunity, right? Like things are really flourishing for her at work. But she says, I lost 25 pounds. And I said, well, how did you do that? And she says, I don't know. And we laugh because that's exactly what happens because we took the focus off of it and we changed and shifted some of these other areas of her life to improve them. And so once she got a life, the weight just fell off, right? That's what happens because we're not focused in on it. It's no more, you're not coming at it any longer from that taskmaster checklist, right? So now forever she will have this more amazing relationship with herself and her body. And now she knows to treat it with kindness. It doesn't occur to us now to emotionally eat because now we understand what's going on to begin with. It no longer occurs to us to eat the half gallon of ice cream because why would we do that to a vessel that we love, right? So everything in her life works much easier and much better from this point forward. And I
Yeah.
think that's, I just that, I don't know. I love what I
I
do.
can tell you love what you do, and it's beautiful. And I think that so many women would really benefit I have a couple things that come up for me around it that I've observed though, and maybe it's because the women who come into my program, maybe they're still struggling. Like maybe when they get to you, they really are ready, like meaning like ready to take those different actions. Because a lot of the women who come in to work with me, I think that they're struggling with a little bit of this sense of um maybe worry that they're not worthy to
Mm,
even make themselves that much of a priority, or they're still grappling with like that fear that like, well, if I try to like they're not even ready to set a boundary maybe. Like a lot of the
yeah.
women who come in with me to me, we're at the point where I say to them, we're not setting any boundaries yet. That's not what we're doing. All we're focused on is your relationship with yourself and feeling like you're safe enough to be able to set that boundary where you feel safe enough to say, some people come in and they're like just ready to hit the ground running. But because we're not solving one specific problem, this is usually the problem, is that they are so entrenched in that other way of living, using their coping mechanisms, people pleasing, perfectionism, control, still getting emotionally triggered and things like that. So we're building like a foundation of enough safety for them. And then as they move through the program, by the time they're in about 6 weeks of the program, they're starting to be able to say, okay, yes, I want to start to change some things. But even then, it's like the spiral of healing is what I talk about, that, this is like for the rest of our lives, to some degree, we're meeting ourselves at new levels. And we might be at this new place where maybe you go back, you go, why am I eating the half gallon of ice cream again? And it's another opportunity to say, oh, I've now met another aspect of myself, another maybe inner critic part or trickster, part, whatever. And that part is that I work with them to say, like, now it's another part in us that's ready to be examined and healed, rather than, oh, I'm a failure and I fell back. It's like, no, 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 thank you. Thank you for
Right.
having that, like letting me see that there's another part of me. Like I talk about reclaiming wholeness, like it is building a relationship with ourselves, reclaiming
Right.
wholeness, and recognizing that like you might have found another young part of yourself that is needing attention from you, needing some of your care. And that when you do that, then that one won't bother you, it won't show up. So I wonder, do you have women who come into the program who, when you suggest these things to them, like, you know, this is what's happening, you're overdoing, that they say, yeah, but I'm not really ready to stop doing it, or it's too scary to stop doing those things, or I'm afraid of what other people are going to say about me, or I'm afraid they're going to be like upset with me if I do less, or
That's such an interesting question. Typically, no. I mean, sometimes I'll get some pushback, but maybe um, the way, like, there's a tool that we use where like, it puts them in the power position, right? Because obviously, I'm never going to force anybody to do anything that they don't want to do,
right.
but this tool that I use puts them in the power position to see, well, if I don't make this change, here's my result, or here's how I'm going to continue to feel. And then they get to ask themselves, do I want to continue to feel this way? Do I want to continue to have this result? What is and something that we get really clear on straight away is, what is their big, most important why,
Yeah,
right?
it's so
And
important.
because once they have that, and if they see, oh, well, if I stay afraid to speak up and set a boundary, well, then I'm not going to get to my big why, right? And then I'm going to feel like shit every day, and my result is, shitty. That's right.
Yeah.
And so I think by and large they see, oh, well, you know, I'm gonna do the thing that makes me feel uncomfortable, because what I always point out anyway, you feel uncomfortable anyway, right? Because when
Totally.
we don't set boundaries, we already feel uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
So and always pointing out, because like that inner voice is always going to tell us that, oh, if we set a boundary, for example, you're going to make it worse, right? They're going to leave, or there's going to be a fight. And that voice, is that trickster voice, right? Is really never accurate. And typically, obviously, when we want to speak up and set a boundary, it's because we're deciding that we also matter,
Yes.
right? Not just the other person. And that typically, in my experience, and in any of my clients' experiences, relationships actually improve, right? And I'm sure that you see that, right?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Totally.
they don't get worse, they improve, right? Because now they see that you're respecting yourself, right? And so then it just up levels the whole relationship if the relationship is meant to continue, right? But anyway, regardless, it gives you intel, right? If
Yeah, totally. And you know what
red
you're saying
flags
is
if it's not supposed to continue.
right. And like I mean, in addition to it, I know that this is implicit, but I'm just gonna say like when we take care of ourselves, and I don't just mean through action, I mean through like moment. I don't mean just like yes, there's a taking care of ourselves through the food that we eat and the actions that we have in the world, but also just as we build this relationship with ourselves and we make ourselves matter, we actually start to become the source of our own validation. We become the source of that
Yeah,
like the things we're trying to seek in the food or seek in the people or whatever. And we start to actually feel good on the daily, like where it's like instead of me waiting, like instead of me kind of wanting someone else to validate me, I'm like, I'm actually kind of good. Like I'm not really
yeah,
needing that. And so we're not in the ups and the downs of all of that. But I also recognize, I mean, I think it's really great. I want to point out a couple of things that I think that it's really great that you do work with women who come in and they're more and they're at that ready place. And I think I'm kind of identifying that it's really interesting because I think that we do work with a person people at a different point in their journey because I think a lot of the women that I am working with also the truth is that oftentimes in their relationships when they do show up initially in their more whole place, it does actually sometimes threaten people.
oh
And they
sure,
do respond in these ways that can make the person feel like I can't be my true self. And so the work is obviously in like, wait, you have to be patient here. You can't just like crumble after one thing. Of course, people, we're in a system, any system. I mean, even like nature or whatever, like if something changes, others have to adapt around it. It
yeah,
takes a little time. It's not, but I think oftentimes when you and I might say to a person, because I'm a big believer in I've like take new action, show up differently. Like this is like a big piece of the program that we're in, but it's just not the first step for us. It's the first step is building inner safety and a sense of feeling like, oh, you said awareness, self-acceptance, kind of self-love, connection. But then ultimately it is the showing up piece. But I think I'm gonna lost my train of thought. So I think I was just saying that like people oftentimes it's like there's like a way that we have to recognize that when we change the system, the initial reaction could be a little wobbly, but people deeply desire most people deeply desire to be connected with us, not connected with some shell of who we
right,
are, like the
right,
facade, the image
right.
we project. Now, their inner critic, aka inner
That's a
protector,
different
aka
story.
ego, is might be like, no, like, you know, you used to do this for me and I want you to keep doing it for me or something. And they might have a little tantrum, but eventually it's actually better for them too, because we don't really, when you talk about the overdoing, I talk about the concept of like, we're taking on more than 100% of responsibility. Really, we each are supposed in adult relationships, it should be like, I'm taking on 100% ish, and you're taking on 100% ish. Now, that doesn't mean that like if you're sick, I'm not gonna take on more. It's not like that. But generally speaking, on average, and
Right,
what we're usually doing is encroaching on there. So if we had 200% in total, we're now taking like say 130% or 150%. And that means that we're infantilizing them. We're limiting them from standing in their full power. We're actually kind of
yeah,
like coming in and doing this thing that isn't good for us and it's not even good for them. And when we pull back and like you said, it's not that I matter more. I just freaking matter. I just matter. I matter at least like even a drop more than you did before is a good thing, right? And when we start to even those things out, we actually get into a real relationship.
right. It's
Not this
beautiful.
like kind of weird, kind of I'm taking care of you, doing more, like you're doing
Right,
less. I'm always disappointed in you. You're always feeling I'm controlling. It's like we come into this like this little more symbiotic relationship with each other. interdependence, some people would say. And it's like, boom, like that's where it's at. And then,
That's where it's
by
at.
the way, that's what makes us actually not need to eat. Like we're no longer needing to eat because, oh, like they disappointed me. Oh, they didn't see me. Oh, they don't respect me. Oh, I'm in pain. It's like, no, like, oh, like I didn't even chew. I didn't even walk in the pantry today because
Right.
I didn't even have a moment that I needed to soothe myself because I actually felt freaking great all day.
Uh-huh.
And so that's where you're talking, right? That's where you're talking about that this is like one of those things like, you know, as you build, you start to build like my words would be like there's a foundation that you build it on, and then you start to, it's like you're no longer, it's no longer like gripping for dear life on like just every decision every day. It's like things start to happen. I know you say this, like things start to happen. It's like the woman who's like, I don't know how I lost the weight because she
Hmm.
wasn't like efforting, oh,
Right.
like
Without effort.
muscle my way through life. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I love it. It's just so fun.
I love it. And we went 15 minutes beyond where we said we were going to
I
go.
know what's so hard.
But oh my gosh, maybe we're going to have to do this again.
I
I
think
don't
we, yeah, because maybe we'll pick like a specific thing. In fact, if people are listening and they have a
know.
specific
Yeah.
question, it might be fun for you to comment below or to the side or whatever and just say, hey, listen, I've got a really specific question that brought up for me. Or maybe there's a reason why you think you'd like to work with one of us at some point and achieve these goals in your life, and you'd really love to feel better. But there's a part of you that's not so sure, and maybe it's like you can share with us what your protector part or your critic is saying about why you shouldn't do this, and tell us, and then we can talk to that specific thing that's going on. And why don't we
Absolutely.
do this? I would love for you to tell people about your program, but why don't I first just tell people real quick like how they can reach me, because as I said, I'm not right now in the middle of a launch or anything like that, but you can reach me by going to my website, which is thewholesoulway.com. And on there, you'd be able to find at the bottom like my social links. You can also get on my email list. I'm also doing soul-led second half calls that are free, and you can register for them there. So there's a lot of ways to connect with me, and we can build a relationship that way. And then obviously then you'd be informed of things that are coming up that are, paid programs as well. But it happens to be that at this magical time right now, October 30th of 2024, because this is going to go on and live on in a, in perpetuity. So we need to make sure people can get to you in a general way as well. But Kelly is right in the middle of launching her program that is the most perfect timing. Even though your protector parts, your trickster parts, your inner critic is going to say, this is the worst time of year. What are you talking about, Kelly? But it is the best time of year because you actually could go into the holidays in a way where you feel more peace and you have a better relationship with yourself and food, and you don't even beat yourself up over the things you do,
Mhm.
and you don't do the things that you don't like what you do. And that would be so great. So tell everybody how they can learn more about your program and sign up for your program quickly, because they have to sign up soon, right? I think you have a start date coming up.
November 7th is when we start. It's 8 weeks, but I take into consideration the holidays, so we work around that. But it is a really great time of the year because you are going into the holidays, right, with so much tremendous support and new tools. And then also you're starting and finishing 2025 a different person, a whole up-leveled person, right? The way I like to look at it, or I talk to what I like to say is like it's like upgrading your operating system from 1.0 to 2.0, right? It doesn't occur to you to go back, right? Why would you go back to slow and frustrating and stressful? We're not going to go back. So, right? So if you wanted to really up level your whole relationship with yourself, this is a really great time to do it. And it can go to my website, Kelly Summersett with two T's.com. And right on my front page, it's Mind Body Now. That's my class. And and if you click on that on my main page, it's Mind Body Now, it's going to take you to, just a short page where it's going to give you more information. And then also there's going to be a sign up link if you want to get some determining questions, right? Maybe you don't want to reach out to me. Maybe you're just like, I don't know this chick. but let me download these questions and see if this could be a good program for me. And then that way we would be able to stay in touch. So anyway, yeah,
Well,
November.
I have a couple of questions for you now. Okay, so my first question is, can you remind me, it's a class, but then there's support from you though, right? So this
Oh,
is
it's
like,
totally high touch. That's so every week it's the small group. I limit it to 3 to 5 women because it is so high touch. And so every week there's group, hour and a half of group coaching via Zoom. And then everybody gets 2 1-on-ones with me, one towards the
mm,
beginning, one towards the end. There's the private Facebook group. I don't just say I want to hear from you in between. Like I kind of expect it. I don't even I expect it.
yeah,
um, because that's how women get so far in the 8 weeks, right? So it's pretty intense, but it doesn't with the holidays coming up, it doesn't take a ton of time either because the mind, body, now, those are the 3 tools, right? You learn how to manage your mind, you learn how to love and understand your intuitive body, and you learn how to be now. So what you're doing is you're practicing these tools in your everyday life, right?
exactly.
So it's not like oh, I've got to find time to do it. No, you're doing it in real life, and which is going to give you time at the end. Yeah.
Yeah, which by the way, like I think is one of the big misnomers about a lot of things. Like I'm sure you've done this too, and I've done it, is like I take a class and I learn things, but then I don't really execute on them. Like I don't really do anything. And the magic in my program and your program is that there's a lot on execution. It's not so much like, let's just imagine it's not so much on doing new things, it's doing things differently,
Yeah.
so that it's not like we're saying you now are going to have to, like, so if you do go say for a diet, it's like, okay, now you have to find time to meal plan, you have to find time to go grocery shopping for these new things, you need to learn new recipes, you need to this, and you're just like, okay, that's like 3 hours a day. This is more like replacing the kind of like replacing the unhelpful things that we do now
Yeah.
with the things that are really going to get us closer to what we want and help us feel better and likely free up a ton of mental energy and time along the way. So it actually has the potential. And I only want to say this because I think when people go into the holidays, it's so easy to be like, but I'm already so busy. But it's like, wait a second, but what if you actually were less busy because you were more intentional about what you chose to do? You
Right.
asked for help more, you didn't get hung up. So I'm only pointing this out for you because it's like, it's so easy to have that brain kind of coming in and being like, or what about this one? Like, but I want to be able to eat what I want over the holidays. And it's like, okay,
Go for
like we're not saying this isn't a rule book. This isn't like us saying, no one's here
Right.
saying, like you said, this is about actually, if anything, you stepping more into your inner authority and your autonomy than ever before.
Oh, 100%.
There's no one that's going to be like, well, you have to do
There's
it
no
this
more
way.
finger wagging at yourself to
Right. So we're
yourself.
not going to finger wag, because the point is, and that doesn't mean that we don't actually invite you, because I know similar things we do, like an invitation to be like, hey, this might be a place where, are you ready to set a boundary there? Or is this something that this is the result you want? And we've both identified like and agree that this is the thing you have to do. How can I support you in getting there? That's a different story. But oftentimes it's those things that free people up. So, okay, so an hour and a half a week of group call, which includes what, some training, or is there training that's separate too? Like, are there
Yeah,
separate
there's
things? Or is
there's
everything?
worksheets and then there's accountability in the Facebook group. There's all kinds of accountability,
Okay,
right?
cool.
So yeah, and
Great.
then the one-on-ones and all the things,
It's so
right?
wonderful.
All of
Well,
the
it's
things,
such
and
important.
it's very transformational for
Yeah,
sure.
well, that's what I was actually going to say before, is that like that the piece about when you actually start to change the way that you show up in your life.
Right.
That's the transformation. There's tons of stuff that could be happening internally, like, like I have to learn how to have a better relationship with myself. What does that mean? There might be actions like other things, but really at the end of the day, it's when we make the change in the actual way that we show up in the world that we prove to ourselves that we matter. It's like
Mm,
actually,
yeah,
it's
that's
like
beautiful.
sometimes
Hmm.
we have to prove our worth by actions. You
Oh,
know, and we
yeah.
say, I'm making everybody else matter through my actions. I'm going to confirm to myself that I matter through my
That
actions.
that's beautiful.
And I think that's when we start to really embed it in who we are and it becomes part of our foundation versus surface level kind of up here. Oh, yeah, I'm going to change that and I'm going to do that. But then maybe we make teeny tiny little changes. It's that circle of the real action, the embodied action that I
Right.
think is what you say when we say like, this is like a reset of your operating system, an upgrade of your operating system.
Yeah.
So, well, I love it.
Yeah.
And so people will get to find you and sign up
Yeah.
and yay.
I love it. This is so much fun.
I know
And
it totally was fun.
maybe we need to continue to do this.
I would
We'll,
love that. I would
we'll,
love that. Is there anything you want to add before we wrap up?
no, no. I
All
think
right.
we said it all, right? Don't you think?
I think we said a lot, and I'm sure we have a
Maybe
lot more we could say.
we didn't say it all.
Oh gosh, there's so
I think
much to talk.
you and I could blah blah for a long time because this is our passion.
It
So
is our passion. And
yeah,
because I think that it's oftentimes needs this kind of nuanced conversation because I think a lot of us, maybe it's because we have such strong inner critics that it's like we can almost tune out this possibility and get so stuck on the ways that we're used to doing it. Like I talk about like there's a rut and there's a groove. The rut is your ego's kind of your, inner critic's rut. It's so deep and it's like we're just that's the way you do it. This is the
yeah,
path. And then like
right.
we have to pop ourselves over into what I would call a soul groove, like a
Yeah,
groove but it starts off so
yeah,
shallow that it's
yeah.
like easy to like right. And so it's easy to not to look at something that you're doing, say like through social media and read what you say. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree with all that. Scroll, 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 instead of really feeling like, wait a second, it's actually something I could do. Like that's not just for other people,
Mm.
like I could
Mhm.
actually have that life. And I want to say, yeah, you can.
Yes,
Yeah.
100%.
And
It's
so
available to all of us, right?
it
So
is, it is. It just is, it's usually like it's that moment that we decide that we do matter enough that we're willing to reach out to work with someone else who's going to help us to not just think we matter a little more, but to realize we really matter.
we do.
We really
And,
matter.
and you matter. And I
We,
matter.
we totally matter. All right, cool. Well, so we will do this again, I'm sure.
All right. I love it.
Thanks to
Hey,
everybody.
Deb.